I mean, Sean Worth, if I can bring you in, delighted you're on Talk today. Thank you for joining us, ex-advisor to the now Lord Cameron. What does it say about the state of the Tory party that a man who stalked out of Downing Street 7 years ago with a flea in his ear from the British people is now apparently being named as the saviour of the Tory party?
Well, you've got to look where the Conservatives are in the polls. They're at least sort of 16, 18 points consistently behind. There's growing calls within the backbenchers, some aspects of it, to change the leadership and do something, because we've got probably a year to go potentially up to about that. So it's a big move. I agree with you. It's a very strange move as well, as you're all saying. But remember, apart from Tony Blair, David Cameron is probably one of the best communicators still in British politics. I don't think there's anyone better than him at articulating what the Conservative Party is for and, appealing to voters on that level at least. So, yeah, it's a big move, but let's see if it pays off. I wonder, actually, after all of this, after getting rid of Suella Braverman, who clearly was divisive and very unpopular, but I don't think the policy would change, by the way. And then the Cameron coming in, a couple of other changes. People probably don't know about the Victoria Adkins, your friend that wouldn't come in the rain. I don't think that anyone will really take much notice of them. But will the polls shift with David coming in and Suella going? That's the big question.
And Sean, what do you think Rishi's banking on here? Is he banking on talent from Cameron, or is it a sense of nostalgia from the British people to a time when perhaps politics was a little bit more grown up?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think David Cameron, you don't need David Cameron to be Foreign Secretary. There's plenty of people that could go into that role, and people were asking, have you got no one left? Have you got no one left, to fill these jobs for? You've got to bring someone else back. I don't think that's what it's about. It's about having someone with that experience around the table. And remember, apart from Boris Johnson, who obviously wouldn't work because they don't work well together, David Cameron is one of only two Conservative leaders that's won a general election since 1992. So there aren't that many people with really top-level experience like that left in the Conservative Party, apart from Boris Johnson.
But of course, the obvious thing, gentlemen, is with respect, and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. I think it's a busted flush. For 7 years, he's been Pete in the political wilderness. It does smack of desperation. 6 weeks ago, he tweeted, HS2 shows that this Prime Minister is way out of tune with what the British public wants. We know that. Rishi Sunak criticised 30 years of Tory leadership in a speech about a month ago. I would think that most people would go, what, you're banking on somebody... This is about bringing back a centre one nation Tory and saying, we're not going right and we're not going left. Because I would suspect, unless I'm missing the point, and you two know more than me, that the Conservative Party have been replaced almost in the centre of British politics by what Keir Starmer's done to the Labour Party in the last couple of years. Isn't that fair enough?
I think that a lot of that is absolutely bang on. It's very interesting with David Cameron and with Rishi Sunak. He talks a lot about wanting to be the candidate of change, but of course the Conservatives have been in power for 13 years. And also, how can you argue you're the candidate of change by bringing back the guy who was there previously? But Sean's right. 2015, there were a lot of people who maybe have deserted the Conservative Party in the polls that we're seeing, who may just say, actually, that guy David Cameron is back there, maybe I'll give them a chance. But I think with a 19-point deficit in the polls, consistent lead by Labour, Rishi Sunak, this is the last throw of the dice, really.
And is it smart, though? Because, you think David Cameron, you think Brexit. And the people who wanted to remain will probably never forgive Cameron for the fact that we had that referendum in the first place. People who voted Leave will only ever remember him as a Remainer. Can he win with anybody?
I think the Brexit debate is pretty settled as things go on. I don't think there'll be too many people voting on Brexit lines, certainly. So it is a question of what the government could do in the next few months. It's not about the foreign side of things necessarily, let's hope, although, of course, there are big issues there with Gaza and, of course, with Ukraine. It's really, I think, about domestic policy, about the economy. It's also about Rwanda. We're going to get that judgment tomorrow from the Supreme Court. Let's see what happens. Autumn statement next week, and whether there can be some sort of incentive to vote Conservative, whether the economy can turn around. That's the question for Rishi Sunak, and that could lead to him doing a little bit better than we think he will at the moment.
Sean, also, within about 5 minutes of him being, brought back into the government, already the questions about his, Greens Hill lobbying of government ministers when he was being paid £720,000 a year by that organisation, apparently links to Chinese security firms. You look at Rishi Sunak, and if you're me, Suella Braverman was sacked and then he brought her straight back. He gave Gavin Williamson a job. Both of those were appalling decisions in terms of if we look at it now. Can this turn the Tory party ship round, in your opinion? You used to advise David Cameron. Has he got that Midas touch?
He's certainly, as I said at the beginning, he's certainly a brilliant communicator, and I think it's only Tony Blair left around that can match him on that. I don't think there'll be any real change of policy. I certainly don't think he'll be a sort of backseat driver. He won't try and change policy on China or the Middle East or anything like that. You know, he is a genuine team player, and I think number 10, obviously they wouldn't have brought him back if they thought that he'd bring any kind of previous points on HS2 back, for example, like you mentioned, that he's got some disagreements. I don't think that you'll see any of that. I think you'll see him doing some political diplomacy stuff with the Foreign Affairs brief, but closer towards the election, obviously he'll be brought into that campaign as a sort of elder statesman who's got that experience, who is a great communicator. I think the jury's out on whether it works, though. You know, as Peter's saying there, it's the last roll of the dice. The Tories are consistently behind, and since Rishi Sunak took over a very terrible position, to be frank, after Liz Truss and Boris Johnson had their issues and messed everything up, and the poll level tanked, it hasn't come back up. So something clearly needs to change. I don't think it's going to be policy. It will be the presentation of the party to an electorate that thought they were sort of going down this right-wing rabbit hole with Suella Braverman. Personally, I don't think the policy actually will change. It's much more about the professionalisation of the team and the people that are leading it, and just having people that are not going to mess up in the election campaign.
Sean, really quickly, you were his advisor, David Cameron's advisor, for 4 years. He presumably got that phone call at some point over the past few days. If you were advising him today and he comes to you and says, Sean, do I take this job or not? What would you have said?
He doesn't need advice from me. He's a great judgment, but I just said yes, because it kind of gives him a bit of redemption, brings him back from what was a kind of crash and burn out of politics. If you remember when he lost the referendum and he kind of had to leave, this is his way back into public life, and he's got a nice seat in the House of Lords out of it. So whatever happens at the election, he's going to be a big figure from now on.
Sean, thank you. Pete, just one thing that Sean said that I actually disagree with. He says it's about professionalism. I'm not sure many people understand what the Tory party stands for, if I'm being completely honest. I think it's all right to go. I mean, I don't know what Nick thinks, but, 5 points. I've got 5 points. They haven't actually delivered on any of those points. And professionalism's one thing. I think people want detail as well, don't they?
They're going to hopefully get it as time goes on. You talk about those 5 pledges from Rishi Sunak, stopping the boots, for example, 3 of them on the economy. We'll see on the 4th of January, which is the 1-year anniversary, whether he gets those. But it's really interesting you mentioned that professionalism point. I think in terms of where the Conservative Party is, it's a big question. Lots of support from Suella Braverman in the last few days. Of course, a lot of TalkTV viewers and listeners love her. The question is, for the Conservative Party, it's moving back to the centre ground. Like it or not, elections are won on the centre ground, but that is certainly very much what Keir Starmer is at the moment and what he will continue to be. And that is part of the reason why he is 19 points ahead in the polls consistently.
Well, Peter Cardwell and Sean Worth, thank you very much.